but it is a very teachable story. There are a lot of lessons in here that we can all walk away with this presentation with. Please know that as I begin this story, that my mom would give me the biggest thump on the head from heaven if any of you walk away from this presentation with a spirit of fear and a spirit of paranoia. That's not what this is about. My mom, that doesn't honor my mom. It would honor my mom nothing more for you to walk away with this presentation with tips and a renewed dedication to your personal safety. So without further ado, I will tell you my sweet mom's story and what all we are trying to accomplish since losing her 6 years ago. Just a little bit personally about my mom as I begin. My mom was 50 years old at the time she was taken, and I feel like there are a number of reasons that I'll tell you throughout this story that I feel like make my mom resonate with so many people. And she truly represented the average realtor. She was she'd been married to my dad for almost 34 years. They were high school sweethearts, so they were married as teenagers. And my mom had me when she was 16 years old. And so I always joke, of course, it's not a good look for Arkansas, I guess, as I come to you this morning. But I promise I'm wearing shoes and I have all my teeth. But my mom had me at such a young age that in many ways we were able to kind of grow up together. We were very best friends. We ran 5Ks and 10Ks together. We went to college together. And she always had this dream that she would get me to be a real estate agent and we would work alongside one another. And I always told her that based upon her stories of the industry, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. And of course, here I am with you today, standing here as a realtor. And it's nice. The more I learn about real estate, the more respect I have for that smart side. I think a lot of us, many times, we just think of mom as the matriarch, the loving one, the one that can cook good. But I never equated my mom to how brilliant you have to be a successful agent. And lastly, just a last personal note here is just that my mom was a beloved grandma. As much as she loved being my mom and as much as she loved being a realtor, her favorite role was being a grandma to my kids. All right. This is a heavy topic to start your day with, but let's get right to an uncomfortable truth. And that is that my mom was targeted for the very reasons that could make any of us on this Zoom session this morning a target. My mom did not know the people. There was no personal relationship with these people. They purely sought my mom out because of a perception of wealth. When asked repeatedly, why Beverly? Why this lady? Why did you do this? What, trying to make sense of it, right? It always came back to responses from the bad guys, as I call them, that she was a rich broker, and they knew because of the type of work that she did that they could get her a loan. And so if you don't know at least a high level my mom's story, my mom was kidnapped at a showing, and the whole purpose of their plan was to kidnap her and hold her for ransom. And the bad guys themselves also said that they perceived my mom to be so rich that they would get enough ransom money that they would literally never have to work again. And, I always joke that my parents probably wouldn't like me sharing their personal finance information, but I think it makes an important point. My parents weren't wealthy. Although my mom had a lot of success off and on in real estate, you guys know how it comes and goes. But they certainly, what the perception that these bad guys had was really all they were running with. The bad guys were a husband and wife, and so once the investigators had kind of gotten this couple in their sight, they get a search warrant and they go into their home and they retrieve the bad guy's laptop. And it isn't it eerie, I know you probably sat through safety sessions before where they encourage you, and I'll encourage you to, as you are working with new clients, buyers and sellers, just to see what you can find out online about that person or those people, as best you can from internet searches. But isn't it eerie to know that that same activity can be done to us? And so as the investigators went through the bad guys' laptop, they found that they had conducted a number of Google searches for my mom to see what they could find out about her. And they had gone to my mom's Facebook profile and clicked all through it. And, my mom didn't live, she certainly didn't live extravagantly, but when you're battling the perceptions of people that really are just looking for any proof or any indication that you might be rich, photos of you with your family at the beach to someone else might look like you're living an extravagant lifestyle. And, lastly, evidence was found on that laptop. And I think that this is probably the most eerie thing to me. It's eerie to know that strangers are clicking through your personal photos of your family that you posted with, good intent, just sharing with friends. But also, they knew to go online to county records to search from where my mom lived to identify the property value of the home that my mom lived in, so that would kind of further, does she live in a nice house? And, they could easily identify that she drove, a nicer car. They were able to identify, of course, easily that my mom was married. And so there would be a spouse that could deliver the ransom money. So before I get into talking through the story of how my mom was deceived by this couple, before I leave this slide, I think we do my mom's honor and her legacy, brings it a lot of honor for us to just accept the uncomfortable truth that this really could have happened to any of us. And so through the lessons that we learn from my mom, we can truly keep this from happening again. What happened to my mom was 100% preventable, and we can keep it from happening to you. Oh, this slide. Oh. If you didn't know the context of this story, this could be any real estate presentation ever, right? Poor slide design. I'm not the best at the slide design, but labor of love, I promise. But you see a property here. You see a house, you see a street address, and you see an overview of a, property description here. And, if you didn't know the context of where this story was going, you might just, you could think any number of things. We could have a lesson on real estate photography. But sadly, this property, this house, was where my mama was taken. And if I may, it was truly, maybe to the day, 6 years ago, that my mom began hearing from this couple. And if for a moment, if you guys will just go on this journey with me and, I think that for some folks, depending upon how you learn, this might put yourself in her shoes. So imagine that today you begin getting to both husband and wife. You're sending text messages back and forth with one another. And then throughout this exchange, they provide their email address and you begin emailing them. You learn their names, you learn, like we ask everyone. And my mom did, you'll find that my mom did so many things right. And one of the things that she did consistently among all of her clients is that she had what we call kind of a client profile form. It was a standard template that she used for every client to make sure that she was asking the questions, all the right questions on the front end and documenting it so that she could, remember it and serve them well. And so as mom completed that form and as she took this email address that actually in the actual email address was the names of the bad people. And she puts that into the MLS so that they can receive, email updates for new properties as they hit the market. And she finds out from them. So here we are again. So you find out from this couple that they are relocating to your area due to work. They are already in your area. They are living in a temporary housing situation. They want to get into a permanent residence as soon as possible. And as an added, to add to the urgency of the situation, they and assisting in the urgency of the situation, they are letting you know that they are also cash buyers. So everything sounds good. The phone number that they're calling you from and that they're texting you from matches, the area code of that phone number actually matches the state of this story that they're telling you that they've moved in from. So far, so good, right? This is pretty standard, if you've been in the business long enough, situation. However, everything that I just told you which was what my mom experienced, was 100% based upon a lie. So if you peel back the layers of all of this, the names and the whole scenario and their intentions, all a lie, all wrong, all falsified. The phone number that you're interacting with via phone call and text is a spoof number that's been provided by an app that they've downloaded on their phone. And so you have no idea that it's not even a real number. And it gives the appearance that they truly are from out of state, when in fact, they've only ever always been just right across town. And also, it's a reminder for all of us this morning, because creating new email accounts is not something that we do all the time, right? I mean, we get one, we stick with it for a long time, hopefully. If you think back to whenever you created your email account, all it took was about 1 minute, right? There's no proof of identity to create an email account. You can use any name you want to, and in 1 minute's time, you have an email account with that name. So in this scenario, with what you've been given, as good as it sounds and as safe as it sounds, everything about it is a lie. You have no idea at this point, because you haven't received identification. You haven't had an in-face meeting at all yet. It's all kind of over phone and email. So you have no idea that the husband is a 7-time felon and that everything you've been told is a lie. And so as my mom, sought to serve them, to find properties, so she kept sending them properties and they just weren't interested. And now we know why, right? Because so many, especially bad guys that are going through enough trouble to plan something like this, they want to have control. They want to be the ones to pick where the crime will happen. And so as mom sought to serve them, she couldn't find a house that they were interested in seeing. And inventory was a little low then, nothing like it is. It's laughable for me to say that, because nothing like the madness that so many markets are seeing right now. But so mom began to do like what we all do whenever we can't find the right property for our buyers. And that is that she began talking up this couple and this scenario with other agents within her office. And so it's, another good safety lesson there to let people know what you're working on and who you're serving. But again, it falls a little flat if it's all a lie, and there has been no checks to ensure that they are who they say they are. And then similarly, I always say this, that, kind of jokingly, that by being in this industry, God loved the people that love us. Because, our spouses, our partners have to hear the ins and outs and ups and downs of everything with every transaction, the good, the bad, the ugly. And so that's just part of being married to a real estate agent. But my sweet dad, he knew when he was questioned by the authorities after mom went missing, he knew almost everything that I just told you. And so mom had done a great thing by talking to dad about, and I'll tell you more about her communication with dad, which really helped us. As an aside, I want to pause the story because I think this next part's somewhat important because, when you're thinking about, you hear people talk about situational awareness, and we can bring some things to kind of, internally, we can bring things that kind of impact how aware we are or not. So I think it's important for me to give you a little context here because it could apply to you and your community. So this house, before, you knew that a crime occurred here, this was just a regular house, right? And so this home, to give you more context about it, it is located within the community that my parents lived. A little hard to tell by this photograph, but this property was situated right on the lake. My parents lived on the same lake. Any given weekend, we would be out on my parents' boat. I literally grew up seeing this house. Very nice, I mean, it's not very nice, but a nice neighborhood. Just a few doors, very safe, I should say, neighborhood, one would perceive. 3 or 4 doors down from this particular house is where the pastor of my mom's church lived. So we got, this is safe, this is familiar area. But let me give you another angle of this. So even I knew that this property, about this house, at least high level. But my mom knew from being an agent and being in, living in the area, showing a lot of property, listing a lot of property in the area, that this house has a long history of issues. This house was foreclosed upon many, many years ago. Still bank owned, sitting vacant for years and years and years. There have been issues of squatters throughout the years. There have been issues where people have gotten in and the inside and just stolen almost everything, anything of value, from light fixtures to faucets, you name it. People had even gotten in and, stolen the copper wiring. And so all that to say, mom knew that the interior of this home was really in a state of, disarray is not even the word. It's been destroyed. And also, because of that, we can assume that mom would know that this particular property and its issues really didn't lend itself well to a couple that wanted to get into a property as soon as possible. So knowing all of that, so it's safe, it's familiar, it's my community. This house itself is especially on the interior, is a hot mess. And then you're also dealing with super picky buyers. All of it just is kind of weird, right? You got this weird thing happening. So imagine then when mom got the call that that they wanted to see this. The call came from the husband. We would like to see this house. And so we only know about this phone call from the vantage point of the husband bad guy. He later told the story of how this phone call went during the interrogation. And he said, Beverly did not want to show us this house because when I called to ask her if she would show us this house, she made up he didn't know that she made it up, but she cited a company policy that said, so mom said to him, I'm so sorry, but company policy prohibits me from showing property alone in a rural area. And so from that, we can kind of pull together that, that mom didn't want to show the property. Maybe her instincts was going off because she got a weird vibe from this dude. Maybe she knew that this house was a mess and it was going to be a waste of time. Maybe a combination of both. But I'll tell you something that was working against mom, and I think that so often we forget that real estate photography has a hand in and plays an important role in helping us to stay safe. And so we typically, from that angle, we typically think about real estate photography and not, using it to showcase any items of value in, currently occupied homes. But in my mom's scenario, it was kind of the opposite. Because of the interior of this house being in such bad shape, there really weren't any photos of it online. Just a couple very dimly lit, awful photos, and then this was the leading photo on the MLS. So mom was in kind of a tight spot because there was really no online proof of the interior of this house. It was just kind of her word, and these people were insistent that they see this property. And so in that same conversation where the husband said, and then, when the husband is faced with the agent saying, so sorry, company won't let me show a property in a rural area, which was really smart of my mom. Because it's real easy, I think, for so many of us to say what we would do, and then we find ourselves in a situation or in a confrontation, and then, suddenly you're kind of fumbling over your words. But then what do you do then when the husband hands the phone to the wife and the wife says, hey, sorry about that, but I'm planning to be there and I'll be coming straight from work though. So all three of us will meet there, be coming separately. Would your company be okay if all three of us meet at the property together? And quite frankly, this part of the story is where so often when I'm telling mom's story, in person, that we kind of take a minute and we look around the room, because so many agents are like, okay, husband and wife, how many times have I done this before? I will admit, it's not anything that I'm proud to admit, but, prior to losing my mom and prior to learning more about crime and predators, I can promise you I would have made the same decision that my mom did, because I had these preconceived notions of what a bad guy and what a scary situation looked like. And really, I would have, and I, not proud to admit it again, but I would have never thought when there was a woman involved that there was the possibility in any way for victimization, and certainly not for violent crime to occur. And so there's a lesson for us that bad guys fit no definable profile. We have to be consistent in how we screen everyone to ensure as best we can their identity and their intent. Intent is much harder to discern sometimes. And so in that conversation with that wife, the wife, maybe not obviously, but the wife gave my mom enough comfort that they should go ahead and proceed with the showing. And so my mom encouraged them to be at this property no later than 6 p.m. because it was end of September. The days were getting shorter and there were no utilities at this property, so they needed to view it in the daylight. Another safety tip. And so the day came, it was a Thursday, September 25th. And, we think back to what life was like pre-COVID. And it was a typical real estate day. Mom had started her day in the office. Mom had gone at lunch to an affiliate luncheon. And that was a really fun event, a themed event. Mom won $50 in a raffle. And so in the afternoon, my mom called my dad to tell him what the rest of her day looked like. And she told my dad that she would be showing property to the couple that was moving in from out of state. And at 6 o'clock. And because my parents lived in this community, it was really easy for my mom to tell my dad, that house around the lake, that's the property. I'm going to show that property to this couple. And then I'm going to take my $50 I won at lunch, and I'll get us dinner. So another, a great safety tip from mom was, let someone know your itinerary. And so mom got to this property early, not only professional, but good safety. Assessed it, opened mom. We know that mom, prior to him getting there, that mom opened the house and awaited the arrival of this couple. At 6 o'clock, a black car pulls in beside my mom. A young Caucasian male with dark hair approaches my mom. And so we know at about the same time, we don't know which happened first, however. So imagine both of these things are happening in tandem. Mom gets a text message from the wife. And the wife's story is that she has gotten caught up at work. And she's so sorry. And she really hopes that mom will proceed with the showing and to do her a big favor while she did the showing. Will you take pictures of the interior of this house and text them to me, and then, be available as you go through the property to answer any questions that I might have. And it'll be kind of like I'm there, at least digitally. And then in tandem, again, the husband is there on site, and he apologizes and asks mom the very same thing. Will you text my wife photos? Will you answer questions for my wife? Keep in mind, this showing was the first time that my mom was meeting them face to face. There had been no exchange of ID. There had been no exchange of proof of funds. And so my mom finds herself in a really, really tight spot, a really uncomfortable situation. She has two people, one in her face, one on the other end of the phone, that are asking her to go forward with a plan that deviates from the one that she had set. And it's at this point of the story that I wish so badly, I could help persuade a different outcome. It's at this point of the story that every time I tell the story, my stomach's on fire for my mom. Just because I have this reaction after telling the story 100 times, I know that in that moment that my sweet mom's instinct was going off. She was being put in such an uncomfortable position. And how often, do we find ourselves making these judgment calls, overriding our instinct because for a host of reasons that we do for, well-intended. We don't want to be rude. We don't want to seem weak. We don't want to seem unprofessional. And so my sweet mom agreed to go through this property, show it to the husband, and to have the text exchange with the wife. We went to trial, I guess a few years ago at this point. And at the conclusion of the trial, we got back my mom's cell phone. My mom's phone had been found in the home of these bad people. And, it's really hard to see, but found on my mom's phone were the pictures of the interior of this property. My mom had no idea as she walked through that property that day, texting photos and answering questions. Not only was she being set up and set up in a way that actually kept her distracted the entire time, because she's having this conversation with this person while this other person is pretending to be interested in the house. But imagine how, awful to get my mom's phone back and kind of be excited about it, in a way excited about kind of the nostalgia of these old photos that I could find. But then realizing that the last 10 photos on her camera roll were of the interior of this house, and my mom unknowingly was documenting her last few moments of freedom. And as we've said here, on this screen, you may have wondered why I have this awkward, ugly photo on the bottom right. And that photo, as awkward as it is, was the last photo on my mom's camera roll. It was in this room, in this moment, that from behind, the bad guy put a taser in my mom's side. And he's been very proud to admit that the last words my mom heard in her freedom was that she was about to have a very bad day. He tased my sweet mom, and he bound her in the most ridiculous lime green duct tape. He then came outside and got in his car and turned it around and backed it up to the front door of this house and opened the trunk. And I want to pause this story for just a moment to make another safety tip that applies to every facet of our lives, and I hope that you'll share it with your family over dinner tonight. If there's a good, if we can think of the good that's come from this COVID environment, one thing that can be attributed is that we have learned more than ever probably the baseline of what normal, safe, regular activity looks like within our own neighborhoods. And so when things are off, or new cars are sitting outside the neighbor's house, or what have you, we're probably more mindful of that just because we're home so much. And so to back up, everything that I told you about at 6 o'clock, a black car pulling into the driveway, parking by my mom, young Caucasian male got out with short dark hair, goes into this property with my sweet mom, moments later comes outside, gets in his car, turns it around, backs it up to the house, opens the trunk. I know all those details happened, and I know they happened in the way that they happened because every bit of that was witnessed firsthand by the neighbor. But it was not reported to the authorities until midnight that night when detectives were door knocking and saying, hey, a real estate agent's missing. Did you see anything? Do you know anything? And the neighbor that lived right across the street said, yes, I saw all of this here happen. And so the lesson I think that we can all take away is just to have a renewed commitment to report suspicious activity in the moment to law enforcement. Part of the story I don't like, and I try not to dwell on and think about too much, but it is truth, and it is what happened. That awful man took my mom and put her in the trunk of his car. I think it's easy to watch prior to this happening to our family. I'd watch movies and you see the actors or the people in Law and Order, and while it's disturbing, I never really thought much about it. But when you know that your mama, it's a very different thing. And as if it wasn't bad enough to take my mom, to hurt her and tase her and put her in the trunk of his car. As if it wasn't bad enough to do all of that, before he closed the lid on the trunk of that car, he pulled out his cell phone and he took a picture of my mom in the trunk of that car and texted to his wife. And we can only assume that he did that because he was trying to show that his wife that their master plan was in play. And so let me talk to you a little bit about that master plan. I've told you about the development of this, but how they intended to get the money was not like your typical ransom movie where, you do the briefcase of unmarked bills. They had, they had a fancier plan. And their plan was that they would have my mom record all of these videos, that they would then text the videos to my dad. And my mom, in her own words, would tell my dad how to push all of this wealth that wasn't there, by the way, all of this wealth into accounts that were accessible via the cards in my mom's purse. And so I could talk more about that plan and what led to that. But so that was their plan. However, as all you ladies on this call will know today, it's almost universal. Everywhere I go, every agent I talk to, is that ladies have their own personal protocol that they can speak to every time how they show property, and it's related to the purse. And so most ladies I encounter, they're like, that thing is in the way, or for safety and security reasons, they just leave it locked in the car while they're doing showings. Some take it a step further and lock it in the trunk. All that's great. Some actually, of course, carry it for practical reasons. They have big purses. They keep their files in it. They carry flashlights in it. They carry handguns in it. But by and large, I find that most agents that I talk to leave it locked in the car. And my mom was no different. When my mom showed property that day, we know that she had her car keys on her. She had that $50 she had won at lunch in her pocket, and her cell phone. And to that point, in the bad guy's haste to kidnap my mom and to take her and to put her in the trunk of his car and to take a photo and then drive off, in his haste to do those things, he never realized that she didn't have her purse on her. And so from the second he drove off that day with my mom, not realizing her purse was over in her car, locked in her car, the plan was already ruined. But he didn't realize that until much later. And so he took my mom to another spot, and he made her do the first video that would be delivered to my dad. It was never delivered to my dad, but the first one. And I'll tell you more about that in a moment. So then imagine, alternatively, so we don't know. So by this point, it's probably 6:20, 6:15, 6:20. I don't hear from my dad until 8:30, 8:40. And so my dad calls and he says, son, I can't get in touch with your mom. She's not replying to phone calls and text. And have you heard from her? No, I haven't. And it was odd because I could sense the worry in his voice, but also it was weird because you guys know how hectic and crazy real estate can be. So I just countered that with, Dad, they probably called in family and they're having extra people look at the property, or they're writing a contract, just give her a little time. And he just it was weird and very unlike my dad to be so worried. And so I encouraged him he said, well, your mom told me that she was going to show that house around the lake. And I encouraged him. I said, well, Dad, you just drive around there. Check it out. And I told him that I would go to my mom's office just to see if she was there, which was close to where I live. And we both got to our destinations around the same time. And of course, he arrived at, this property, which was a half acre. And something you couldn't tell by that photo that on the previous screen, but no one's taking care of the yard. Knee grass, high grass, over half an acre, no utilities, just pitch black. And he sees sitting right out in front of this property my mom's car. And he sees through the windows of mom's car that her file that she created for this couple was sitting in her passenger seat of her car. He could tell that mom had also left her purse, that her purse was in the car. And then he could also, and then as he approached the house, he realized that the front door had been left wide open on this property. And so he began, he called me, of course. I encouraged him to call law enforcement. And then he began his own search of trying to frantically, go through the house, the attic, the yard, along the lake shore, trying to find mom. And so course, we ended up, our entire family, other agents, and then so many detectives ended up on the scene. And the later it got, the fewer, none of us, only mom was in real estate at the time. And so imagine your sweet families trying to rally around and build scenarios that could make you okay based upon only the knowledge of real estate that they've gathered from your stories through the years. And so, we were trying, in retrospect, I mean, it was kind of absurd optimism, but, we were trying so hard to remain positive that mom was okay. And so we're trying to build these scenarios where she was in such a good, trusting relationship with clients that she would have actually gotten in her car or got in their car with them, which we knew didn't sound right. And especially didn't sound right that she would leave her purse behind. But the later it got, of course, we knew those weren't really viable excuses. Also, the later it got, the more and more serious the situation became to law enforcement. It wasn't just a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. We really had a strong likelihood of a missing person. And that night, the law enforcement had set up, not far from this house, a roadblock to just stop and ask anyone that drove through, do you know anything? Have you seen anything? Because this is a smaller community. And we didn't know that night, and how could we have known, that stopped at the roadblock was the bad guy himself. And he had been stopped and questioned about his knowledge of the disappearance of a local realtor and denied knowing anything and got out of there. And the reason why he was back out there right by us is that he was returning to the scene of the crime because he realized he didn't have a purse. And what had happened, the realization didn't happen until he had gotten home with my mom. And they put my sweet mom, they locked her in their bathroom. And then they began this freak out that we don't have the purse, the plan doesn't work without the purse. And so the husband left my mom in their bathroom that was being guarded by the wife with a firearm while he came to get the purse. And so much to his surprise, when my mom went missing, we knew exactly where to look. And so he truly was surprised, thrown off that to see so many cops and then to be questioned himself by a cop. And so we didn't know that the two were related, but just right after midnight, so you can see on your screen here, my dad's phone lights up and he begins to get text messages from my mom. So you can see that this is just after midnight. This was 6 hours after the appointment. If you can imagine how excited and relieved we were at first that mom was okay. I was a little embarrassed because so many cops were involved, and I was a little worried for her because I was like, not for her safety at this point. I was just like worried because she was going to have some serious explaining to do to all this law enforcement. But so these texts all came in, 30 seconds, a minute apart, whatever. And we went from complete excitement and relief to horror when that third text came in. And I know none of you knew my sweet mom, but she was, I always joke that she, as sweet and wonderful as she was a little on the boring side. And my sweet mom would have never been out on a Friday night at midnight. Well, I guess this was a Thursday night, but out having drinks. It just wasn't my mom. It didn't fit her personality, it didn't fit her interest. And so what this bad guy did is whenever he was returning back to his home, as he was fleeing the scene that night, he had in his possession my mom's phone, and he began to impersonate her in an attempt to throw everything off. But actually what he did was confirm, because that last text was so out of character for my mom that he actually confirmed that my mom had been taken and that someone was bold enough to try to impersonate her. From there, I did not sleep in many, many days. This is the entire timeline of when my sweet mom was missing. You guys we could talk all day about what this was like, and awful. But if I may, just a moment to talk just about our industry and how, it can be so frustrating, right? It can be so tough when we're working on transactions, and it can, real talk, it can be tough. We get cross with one another. What I cling to from what were really the darkest days of my life was the display of the most amazing humanity from real estate professionals during this time. I had never, I knew a lot of real estate agents because my mom's friends. But this was really when the power of who we are as a real estate family was shown. You can see on the right, there's that very nondescript, it's very, these are soybean fields that are out by where mom went missing, where she lived. And so it's lowland. The soybean required, like, they just flood the fields. It's just yuck, just disgusting. And not a place any of us want to be on foot. But I'll tell you if these fields were full of people. And if we were to break down the professions of the people that were in those fields searching for my mom, I guarantee you 80 to 90% of them were real estate agents. It was real estate agents from all over the country that rallied and took it as a personal offense when my mom was missing. And then it was real estate agents that, quite frankly, that kept the pressure on law enforcement and then later on the judicial process for there to be justice for my mom, because it was seen as, with the real estate family, it was like she was everyone's sister. And so please know that my family remains so thankful, so thankful. And it is our gratitude that fuels what we do with the Beverly Carter Foundation. It will not come as a surprise that it was in the early morning hours of September 30th at 4 o'clock in the morning that a group of, and I forget how many of them there were, 4 or 5 real estate agents showed up at my doorstep at 4 o'clock in the morning to deliver the news that they had seen online, on Facebook of all places, that my mom's body had been discovered. And they didn't want me to find out online, so they showed up at my front door to let me know. I told you that there was going to be this series of videos of my mom telling my dad how to move the money around. And that there was actually one of them that was recorded, but it was never delivered to my dad. We only know that the video exists because the bad guy played it during the interrogation process as kind of a bargaining tool, or what he thought would be a bargaining tool. And so we know that my sweet mom, in that video, that ransom recording, I'm named after my dad. We know that the words that she spoke to him were, "Hey, Carl, it's me. I just want to let you know that I haven't been hurt. Just do what he says and don't call the cops. If you call the cops, it could get bad. And most importantly, to me anyway, I just want you to know I love you very much." And I can't imagine, just 3 things about my mom that inspire me daily. And I'll tell you just briefly in hopes that it would bring you some peace and maybe some inspiration. In these awful moments of the last hours of my mom's life, she was, moments after being kidnapped, more concerned with my dad knowing how loved he was. Evidence was found in the trunk of that car that my mom got her hands free. So even to the end, my mom was fighting. And then lastly, came out during the testimonies during the trial that as the wife stood with that firearm guarding that bathroom door to make sure my mom didn't escape, that although she never interacted with my mom, she listened the entire time her husband was gone. She sat at that door and listened to the sound of my sweet mom's prayers. So even to the end, my mom was full of love and a little fight and her faith. And I'm very inspired by my sweet mom. This is the spot where my mom was found. The events that led to them changing their minds is that the husband returned home that night after trying to retrieve the purse in a complete panic. And like so many of these bad guys, they think that they have the best and the brightest plan. And then they see blue lights. And suddenly that they realize they have this moment of clarity that it was an awful plan. And they don't want to get caught so desperately that they change plans, change focus from kidnapping and ransom to then just kidnapping and let's make this go away. And so they made the joint choice to end my mom's life. They took everything of value that my mom had on her person. Of course, they had her phone. They had her jewelry. They took her jewelry. And even, maybe most disturbingly, the wife liked the shirt my mom was wearing when my mom was showing property that day. And so my mom's shirt was found hanging in the closet of this wife. They brought my mom to this spot, and they ended my mom's life. Through amazing detective work, I could talk a lot about just incredible that they tracked this down to this couple and that they were able to find my mom's body. Just incredible people with incredible skills. And then later, an incredible prosecution team. We have had, at least some level, I know we all have differing opinions on what is justice. And certainly I have strong opinions, but there was justice. These bad people are in prison now. Unfortunately, the wife will be eligible for parole in about 16 years. But the husband is put away forever. And so he's in prison with no parole for 2 life sentences for both capital murder and kidnapping. I'm going to quickly just hit on some takeaways. I know we're right at time, and then I'll close. But just remember from my mom's story that bad guys fit no definable profile. I hope that you will insist upon an in-person pre-showing buyer consultation. If nothing else, I know COVID has all this so tough, and we have to, limit the time that we have face-to-face. So, do like this, get you a Zoom account and have your consultations, virtually at least, to add some level of build rapport and add some level of accountability to the folks on the other side. I hope that you'll build practices where you can obtain ID, and not only that you obtain it and, that you actually have a process that you can share it with trusted colleagues. Just make sure you do all of that very securely. And make sure you do it consistently too. You don't want to just only ask certain people that look a certain way or whatever for ID. I hope that you'll research the mess out of that. I hope you'll all become investigators and just research as best you can, new clients. If nothing else, you'll learn what some likes and dislikes, and you can stay away from hot topics and hopefully help you build rapport with your new clients. I hope more than anything that you have trusted relationships in your life, that you could take that technology that you have in your hand at all times, that phone, that you will have trusted family or colleagues or both, that you can automatically share your GPS location at any time. Use technology to as best you can. And it's, for me personally, I just know that it's hard for me to develop new habits. And so I hope that you will have, you have relationships that you can have this stuff enabled at all times, so you don't have to wait until moments that you feel uncomfortable. I hope you'll think of my mom and trust your instincts more often. I hope you'll keep your back to the door and let your clients lead during showings. I think my mom's story really, I've heard from a number of safety instructors and they always say that. And then you hear my mom's story and you realize how it can happen and the importance. And then, of course, just with the neighbor in my mom's situation, I hope that you will report and feel empowered to report suspicious activity to the authorities. I hope that the safety conversation doesn't end here. I hope that you will, the next time you're in a Zoom sales meeting or a face-to-face meeting, hopefully those get back to happening, sooner rather than later. I hope that you will just, if nothing else, it means a lot just to tell other agents, hey, stay safe, I care for you. Online at the Beverly Carter Foundation website, we have the safety pledge. It's great for this month because it's a time that you can pull this down and you can reflect upon just thinking about what you do each and every time and, reconnect with some of the inherent risk with being a realtor. We do have this nonprofit, as we talked about at the front of the presentation, and I love it. We're a group of volunteers. We all do this on the side, and it's truly a labor of love. And I'd like to think that we're making a big impact and helping a lot of people. I hope that you'll join with us. I hope that you'll join the safety conversation, engage with us on social media. Additional safety resources, not only from your state association, but that you also have the CE shop, which is giving their safety course this month is free. And then I've been on NAR's safety committee this year, and we have really done a lot to expand the safety offerings there. So I want you to be aware that exists, and a lot of really great things there. I could give you a whole presentation on what is there because there's a lot of good stuff. And it's not just boring, stagnant stuff that doesn't impact you. I promise you, it's some really good stuff that you can learn from and share. Last photo I'll leave you with, my friends. You've got my email address there. If any of you ever need anything, please reach out. I'm happy to be a resource to you. This photo, these are my kiddos, how they looked 6 years ago. 1 week to the day before losing my mom, we were out for a run, and my mom had a listing in my neighborhood, and so we stopped, and kids posed for this picture, and we posted it on Mom's Facebook wall. But if you will just allow me just a moment to be a little cheesy, if I may make this photograph of my kids and my mom's for sale sign symbolic. If we can make, if you will allow me, if you can think of your career, your commitment to your career and your professionalism and your excellence as being represented by that for sale sign. I hope that in some small way, my words from my Arkansas living room this morning have made you mindful of the people on the periphery of your career. Your sweet family and friends that so desperately need you to come home safely each and every day. God bless you all, and please stay safe.
Carl, this is Carrie from the Realtors Association. I'm a little choked up, but still I want to say thank you for sharing your story. This is where, if we were in Minnesota, all of us would be giving you hugs. That's our deal. We're Minnesota nice. We would wrap our arms around you. I would like to say to everyone on the call, I hope you leave this morning with at least one idea of one thing you can do differently to change your day today, the way you're going to handle a showing today, the way you're going to handle meeting new clients today. So again, from my heart to yours, Carl, thank you. Carl has agreed to answer any questions for a few minutes. I know we are at our time, so if people need to leave, obviously, please go ahead. But if you do have a question, just unmute yourself, and Carl is willing to answer a few questions.
Absolutely.
Can't see.
Carl, it's Patty Jo, and I don't have any questions. I just want to say that you've changed. I mean, your mom, your story has changed my life. I've listened to you many times. Every single day, I appreciate so much what you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my friend.
And I think, Carl, I don't know if you're seeing the chat. I think a lot of people are very choked up right now, but really appreciating what you've shared today. It's a very personal story, and I think it does make it so much more real for everyone.
It's truly my honor. Sorry if I'm driving anyone to drink before noon today. Oh, it's tough. It's very tough.
And I think with that, since everybody's, I think everybody's letting this all soak in, we'll wrap this up. I do want everyone to know Carl has actually agreed to come back in person, we hope, next October to convention, so that we can see him in person and wrap our arms around him and listen to the story again, because sometimes I think we move on with our daily lives and we forget about these things. And I think always good to have reminders, even as hard as they are. So again, thank you everyone for being here today. Carl, again, appreciate you doing this and sharing your story.
My honor. Stay safe, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.